The encounter forms in this system are completely configurable, so we're going to take a look at how do we configure them. I'm going to begin by selecting a patient, going to today's note, and then I will click on the encounter form button, and that opens up actually a list of all of our encounter forms. These are basically your orders. All of them work exactly the same way. They're all totally configurable. So I will take a look at the lab orders and we'll use that as an example. So when I open that up, it opens up my commonly commonly ordered lab orders. And they are all in what we call encounter groupings. All the groupings show with a heading. They can be moved around, rearranged, added, all of that. So to begin with, I want to right click on a blank part of the form, and then that gives us a couple of options. So first of all, if you're, in this case, there are lab orders. If you've got a lot of lab orders, you may want to have multiple pages of them just for convenience. And so it will allow you to create multiple pages and actually create the names of the tabs that are used. And then the second option there is you can create your own encounter grouping. Here I've got about 8 of them, and I can add a new one if I wanted to just by clicking on that button, and it would add a new group. And once your pages and your groups are set the way that you want them to be, you can simply right click on the heading of the grouping itself. And so if I right click on chemistry, that opens up my encounter grouping setup window, and I can change the name of it. I could put it on a different page if I had multiple pages on this form. I don't. I could tell it what sequence I want them to be in. So if I don't tell it, it's going to put them in alphabetical order. But I can say, well, chemistry I want to be first, and then body fluids I want that to be last. And so all of that is just by changing the sequence numbers of the different encounter groupings. I can tell the system that when you do this encounter grouping that it needs to start on a new column. You can see, for example, hematology and profiles. It just added those to the bottom, the next available space in the next available column. But if I wanted to start at the top, I could tell it to start a new column. I can choose a different color if I want to. The default is going to be to show it in black, but if I wanted to show in blue, I could do that. And then what type of column or what type of grouping is this? So is it a single column, or is it a double, triple, or quadruple column? And that would just tell the system how to configure it. So we are working in the chemistry encounter grouping. One of the things that I want to do here is I want to create an other selection, and the other selection says something else. So maybe something in my table that I don't do very often, but I want to be able to create it easily. And so having clicked create other selection, it tells me that it created it. And now if I click on save, you'll see that it redrew this form and it added other selection there. I can go ahead and do that again. A lot of times we want to have multiple selections there. So I'll go ahead and click create other selection. Go ahead and click save, and now I've got 2 of them. So these other selections can be put in any encounter grouping I want, and they're actually not even specific to the encounter grouping. So if I were to click on, in real life, when I'm seeing a patient, if I were to click on other, it'll pop up a window, let me choose any lab that is in my table. It's not limited just to chemistry. So basically, if you've got multiple pages, you always want on the first page of your encounter form to have a bunch of these, because there are going to be times when you need to order something that you don't routinely do, but that will enable you to do it. And the ones that you do most commonly, you want to put them all on the form. So one mistake that you might make is you might think that, I've got 800 different lab orders and I want to be able to order them, so they all need to be on my order form. That's a mistake, because you end up with so many things on your form, most of which you don't use very often. And then when you're doing this in real life, you have to find the things and kind of look past all the ones that you don't really use. So we recommend that you only put on your encounter forms the labs and the imaging and the procedures, etc., that you routinely do, commonly do, and then everything else you can select by clicking on the other button. So I'll go ahead and right-click on chemistry again. That opens up my encounter grouping. I can select the items that are in this grouping. So if I click on select, it opens up a window and it shows me all of the entries that are in my lab order table that are either in this grouping, those are checked and they show in blue, or are in no grouping at all, and I may want to include them in this grouping. And then that would add that to the group. I can edit a specific item. I can change the information on that item. Or if this is, you're new to the system and you're looking for a particular lab order, or maybe it's a new lab order and it's not already in your table, you can create a lab order and it'll put it right into your lab order table and also put it into this encounter grouping right from there. Go ahead and click save, and again it redraws my form. And that's all there is to it. So again, I can rearrange these any way I want to. Anything that I want to, any lab order that I want to include in this group, in the table, if it's linked into that encounter grouping, it'll automatically draw it in the grouping in alphabetical order. And generally, we don't want to put things in there that we don't use too often. But you can customize, you can configure all of your encounter forms that way, whether it's labs, procedures, imaging orders, they all work exactly the same way. And in addition to this, all of them have an entry in the tables. So to get it into even more specifics, if we go to tables and then clinical tables, we can pull up the lab order table, for example, or the imaging order table, and there we can add more information that's specific to that order. But in a nutshell, that's how you configure your encounter forms.